For this question, they ask us to find the vertical and horizontal asymptote for the graph of the following function, where y equals to 2x plus 1 over square root of x squared minus 9. Then we have to sketch the graph. So first we have to answer the question of find the vertical and horizontal asymptote. To find vertical asymptote, so we will start with the function undefined when its denominator equals to 0, which is x squared minus 9 equals to 0. Then this is a quadratic. We factorize. So we can see x is equal to 3, then x is negative 3. So we have to verify this. For finding vertical asymptote, we are going to find limit approaches negative 3 from the left hand side. And also limit approaches negative 3 from the right hand side. Then for another point will be 3 from the left hand side. And 3 from the right hand side. So how to evaluate this? We'll try to substitute. As we substitute here, negative 6 plus 1. We get negative 5. And then when we substitute the square root here, will be 0. So supposedly it will be infinity. So take note of this. When you want to test value, we want to test negative 3 from the left hand side. So the test value here, we will put x equals to negative 3.1. So you will notice that this denominator is approaches 0 from positive. So when you put negative 3.1 inside this x squared and minus 9, it will give you positive 0 point something. So our 0 will be nearly to positive. So negative over positive will give you negative infinity. Then we repeat. For this, it will be negative 5 also over 0. So when you want to test value, you can notice that the x approaches negative 3 from the right hand side. You'll be choosing negative 2.9. You can notice that your calculator cannot count because it is square root of negative. So therefore, actually this answer is undefined. So why it is undefined? We can look at the domain of the function. If we analyze our domain of this graph, so domain DSLR. So you under search, we have search characteristic, and then we have denominator characteristic. So for this x squared minus 9 is supposed to be greater than 0 only. We cannot equal to 0. So the domain here, it indicates that where's your graph rotated. So the quadratic, negative 3 and 3 more than 0. So your domain only happen at negative infinity until negative 3, then not included, continue 3 to infinity. So that's why when we approaches the graph negative 3 from the right hand side, the graph will be undefined. So it is not in our domain. And then for the same situation, when you want to do the limit when x approaches 3 from the left hand side. So for this case, we are also finding undefined because it is not in our domain. We can't see our graph whether going positive infinity or negative infinity. Then continue. limit for 3 to the right hand side, yes, we will having our graph, it is in the domain. So we want to see our graph is approaches positive infinity or negative infinity. Once we substitute this, we get 7 over 0. Then we go into test value as x equals to 3.1. You'll notice that it brings us positive 0 point something. So the whole fraction here, positive over positive, we get positive infinity. Therefore, after we calculate this, don't forget to do conclusion first, where x equals to 3 and x equals to negative 3, they are vertical asymptotes. Then we continue to horizontal asymptote, where we're going to calculate the limit approaches positive infinity and negative infinity for the function 2x plus 1 over square root x squared plus minus 9, 2x plus 1 over the function x squared minus 9. So as we substitute our infinity into the graph, you can notice that we get IDF, where infinity over infinity. So to simplify this situation of IDF, we're going to divide according to the square root. The highest power here is square root x squared. So we are dividing square root x squared under the surd. So we are dividing under the surd is x squared. So for numerator part without surd, we have to simplify whether you have to choose positive x or negative x. If x greater than 0, we choose positive x. If the x less than 0, we will choose negative x. So since our limit is approaches x from negative infinity, means it will be x less than 0. So we need to divide by negative x. Then we simplify this division. And we substitute the infinity, 1 over infinity, 0. Square root 1, then 9 over infinity, also 0. Simplify this, I will get negative 2. Then we move to the positive infinity. So in the same case here, we're also getting IDF. So we are dividing according to the square root here is x squared. So the numerator part without square root, we take the simplest form of this. As x approaches positive infinity, so we'll pick x on divide by x. So once we divide by x, we simplify. And we substitute our infinity inside, it will be 2 plus 0 over square root of 1 plus 0. So finally we get 2. So the answer here, y, we have y equals to negative 2, y equals to 2. They are horizontal asymptotes. Then finally, using the result that we get here, we're going to sketch the graph. So we will draw all the asymptotes involved here. For vertical asymptote, we are having x equals to negative 3 and x equals to 3. Meanwhile, for horizontal asymptote, we have y equals to negative 2 and y equals to 2. So look back to the domain. We understand that domain is where the function happen, where the graph happen. So our graph only happen less than -3 and more than 3. So you have to know that your graph only happen less than -3 this region and more than 3. So in middle here we won't have any graph because our function we don't have the domain here. So we read our vertical asymptote as limit approaches -3 from left hand side, we get -infinity. When the function come near to the -3 from the left hand side, it is approaches -infinity, means the graph is going down here. Then when x approaches 3 from the right hand side, your graph is going positive infinity. Means when your graph get near to the 3 from the right hand side here, your graph is approaching positive infinity. Means your graph will be nearly here. Positive infinity going up, negative infinity going down. Meanwhile, for this part, where your x going negative infinity means your x go as left as you can. Alright, so x approaches negative infinity means go as left as you can, and your graph, your y here is go to -2. So when you go as left as we can, we are approaching -2. So we're having a curve here, go as left as you can, and it will get near to -2. And another result, when x approaches positive infinity means x go as right as you can. So this side, your graph y is getting near to value 2. So go as right as you can, the graph is getting to the value of 2. So lastly, we see here we don't have any intercept, x-intercept or y-intercept. So we just label to the final stage. So this is our graph that we're drawing. So make sure you label your y-axis, x-axis, origin, your asymptotes, and your graph.